Hi, welcome to the Your Voice Here podcast. This podcast is all about taking a fun and inspiring look at people's journeys into podcasting, radio presenting, being a voiceover artist, or whatever they're looking to use their voice for to be heard. My name is Jeremy Chapman, and I'm the host of this podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking podcasting, and I'm joined by Oli Jackson, host of the Slimson Podcast.
You're listening to the Slimson Podcast, an informal monthly chinwag about all things house music and the power of a repetitive beat.
So let's hear all about his journey from the start, right to where he is now and where he wants to be. And I hope it's in some way helpful to you too. Joining me today on the Your Voice Here podcast is an actor, a voiceover artist, and podcaster himself, an all-round lovely chap. I'm joined today by Oli Jackson, host of the Slimson Podcast. Hello, Oli. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast. It's nice to be a guest. Having done lots of interviewing myself recently, it's kind of nice to be on the other side of the
have different shoes
table
on today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you here. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about your podcast and various bits. And I'm sure some other questions will come from it. But to begin with, Oli, how about you tell me and all the listeners about your podcast?
Yeah, well, the Slimson podcast came about because I have a brand called Slimson, which is a clothing brand based around kind of memories of house music and electronic music from back in the day. I'm a certain age now where I still enjoy going out and listening to music and still have lots of friends that do that. But I had a feeling that it would be nice to celebrate certain clubs and certain times from way back. And that's what Slimson, the brand, is about. Slogans and kind of famous lyrics on T-shirts to do with house music. And I thought to myself, well, there's also perhaps a place here where we could get those characters from that time onto a podcast, into a kind of an area, and create episodes where we could interview those people and sort of celebrate those times for our audience and for our customers. And so it started off a bit like the brand, really. It's a bit of a happy accident. And then I kind of wanted to do the podcast. I work as an actor, I work as a voiceover artist, as you say, but I didn't really know how to go about that. And obviously I know you, Jeremy, and you just starting Your Voice Here production company, and your ability to help with the podcast has been massive. So yeah, it was a kind of the two things coming together, I guess, at the right time. It was an opportunity as well for me to kind of chat, and I like talking and using my voice. And I thought, podcast seems to be a very, very popular medium. Well, it's a crazy medium. Everyone loves it. I love listening to podcasts, and I just thought it'd be nice to maybe ask some people if they'd like to come on. And I was just super, super lucky. I've had some really great guests. We've had Mr. C from The Shaman.
He's a good.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Legend.
With water. And Danielle Moore from Crazy P. We've had loads of people. And it's like everything, really, Jazz. I find that if you ask people, most people are really nice and they'll say yes if you kind of ask politely, and just ask these characters if they'd like to come on the podcast. And it's been great. We've had really good listening figures. And it's just another tool, I think, for me to sell stuff on Slimson, and just to keep me creative in between the jobs as an actor, that sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I'm quieter. So yeah, it's great, really. That's how it came about.
Because you are spinning a lot of plates. Obviously, you're an actor. You do a little bit of DJing yourself as well.
I do.
So
yeah.
You're a man of many, many talents.
Yeah,
so
master of none, but yeah, do lots of different things. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean I've had you DJ for me a few times as well, and I thought you were sensational.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
You were, in fact, a few years ago now, I did a one-off. I'd like to bring it back, but an entertainment evening, comedy and entertainment, called Heavy Petting on a Thursday night.
That's right, which we did together in Berkhamsted.
We did, and you DJ'd. We had it was like a sort of cabaret night, and then you did a little DJ set afterwards, and
it was great fun, wasn't it?
It was brilliant fun. What a great laugh, and I'd like to do more of those, because like you were saying, the live events and live music and just going out and doing those sorts of things really took a knock.
So important.
They're so important. I think we realised how important they were with lockdown.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
With your podcast, you were bringing that back to life, really. You're creating that feeling of, we don't, as we get older, we don't want to feel like we're left behind. And there's a whole generation of people that were with house music at the start, the first time around. And they're thinking, well, we don't want to switch on to classic FM yet. I'm still happy to be listening to house music, and I want to hear about these stories. I still want to feel that actually that youngster in me is still there. And I think some of the interviews you've done, Mr. C, wow, that was just, for me, from The Shaman, was was incredible. What a fantastic guy. We had to split it over 2 parts.
Yeah. I mean, he was just brilliant, as you say, Joe. I mean, and it was kind of really important to me to try and get him onto the podcast because the T-shirt that kind of launched Slimson and the reason that I have a clothing brand celebrated various clubs in London, but one of which was The End, which of course Mr. C has been a DJ, longer than he's been a pop star, and he also. He was the man behind that nightclub. So to get him on and to hear from the horse's mouth about the process of getting that club from the ground up and starting it and all the amazing things that happened in that nightclub, it was just incredible, really.
Oh, amazing.
And as you say, there's such an appetite for people to go back and to talk about that time and remember that time, pre-mobile phones. And these are all people now, a lot of these people have got kids, but they're still, they're going to Ibiza maybe once a year. They're still listening to that music. They may have grown up a little bit and don't go out as regularly, but there's such an appetite for it. So I kind of feel proud, really, to be, giving people the opportunity to go and hear these stories, and it's something that I've created. I was there on the dance floor. I didn't DJ then. I've only really DJed in the last 9 to 10 years. Taught myself quite late on with that, but I also always loved house music and acid house culture and everything that went with that. So really excited to get him on as the first guest, and that gives you a little bit of clout, I think, when you have somebody of that caliber to then go forward and try and get better people for future episodes. And so it's exciting, really exciting, and learned a lot from you as well of the technical side of things, which I didn't know anything about, and that's not my skill. I think it's really important to have somebody you can kind of partner alongside, and with you producing the podcast, it gives it that real kind of polished professional feel that is important to me, because a podcast can be anything. Some people record them on a phone and it's crackling and it's really raw and crazy, but I wanted mine to have almost like it to feel like a radio interview and a really kind of classy episode every time. So it's been great to have you on board with that. So
thank you. I feel very honoured to be part of it, because some of the guests you've spoken to, all of the guests you've spoken to have been incredible, but some of them were real. Have been really inspirational. As I say, Mr. C definitely was just one I was like, oh my God, seriously, Mr. C? Wow, that's going to be incredible. But then
we've had Sam Redmore recently. People might know him.
Well, I was going to say you've had Sam Redmore, but I was going to say it's Adriel, isn't it? From
exactly. Jackboot Jack, who he's got some incredible remixes of all the kind of disco classics and some sort of other records that you would know. He basically remixes all of those and creates edits, and he puts them onto his SoundCloud for free download. You can now kind of purchase some of his back catalogue, but he gets amazing download numbers. I mean, it's just crazy.
Phenomenal.
Millions and millions of people are listening to his stuff. And as a DJ who plays out, I use a lot of his tracks because they're very mix friendly, because obviously everything's done this sort of, fall to the floor house beat, but it's all the classics that he reinvents. So he was on there as well. As I say, we had Danielle Moore from Crazy P, we've had Sam Redmore, and Jem Haynes, who is he was a resident down at Space in Ibiza for many, many years, and I now DJ alongside him in London, weirdly, on the corporate circuit. So it's been great to kind of got to know him through the podcast, and now he's become a friend as well. So it's really weird how these things align, and I'm a big believer in if you get out there and do stuff, the more you do, the more people you meet, and the more opportunities come your way, and that's how kind of, work and opportunities breed more opportunities and more work. So it's all cool. Yeah, I'm really, really excited to be doing the podcast and continuing to do it in the coming months. Yeah.
Well, Jem Haynes, I thought, was, again, another one that's fantastic. A great story. He told, DJing as a young kid, and people wouldn't believe that it was him. They were going, all right, we'll come down here. And, a bit of a baptism of fire for him to perform. But yeah, some really great interviews. And I think listeners do go, I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can go and check out all of the episodes, because they are exceptional. If you like house music, even if you don't like house music, go and listen to them anyway, because the stories are really real and they're very inspirational about how they got from where they were to where they are now, and with Adriel, with Jackboot Jack, seeing his rise has just been absolutely incredible. To think we interviewed him this year, was it, or last year now? I mean, it was this year.
Last year now, probably.
It was, and he's just grown and grown and grown. He's just done some bits for BBC and stuff. So he's just, it's phenomenal.
It's really exciting. Yeah, played our small part, hopefully.
Well, I think we have. Yeah. But let me just go back there to the start. Then, when you were starting off your podcast, you identified that the podcast would be of great benefit to you because you have a fantastic apparel range, you're a DJ, you're looking to interview people, you've got an interest in talking to people, like you say, you love talking. Tell me about going from starting the podcast to then approaching people, like guests, approaching them. You say, they are lovely, but how would you say the best way to approach your guests are?
Well, I think before I answer that question, and I think I know, hopefully know the answer to that. One of the things that I really wanted to have was a kind of a backup, a technical backup, so that I could really focus on the things that I'm good at. I think that is making connections and talking to people. What kind of potentially makes me nervous is that they start saying, "Oh, we need to record on this day. How quickly can you turn it around?
Yep.
What sort of microphone do you?" All these things, I'd suddenly start panicking a bit and think, "Oh crikey, I don't really understand all of that." Therefore, it's going to put me in a kind of on the wrong footing to talk about the passionate stuff, the stuff that I do know about. So it was really important to have you there to sort of hold my hand through that process. But I've also always found, and with Slimson, with the brand, and with certain DJ bookings that I get, that actually Instagram and direct messaging people, if you go about that in a kind of quite informal way and don't ask for too much, just sort of drop the question in there, people invariably get back to you. And I found, with Slimson, I don't ever ask someone for a photograph if it's a kind of a celebrity I'm sending stuff to. I just ask them if I can send them things. They'll say, yeah, of course, here's my address, send it out, and then invariably 9 times out of 10 they'll post an amazing photo. Yeah. So I think it's just, don't be afraid to just drop into people's direct messages. I found that works for me. Equally an email is fine, but I think just quite informal, really. Just say, do you fancy coming on for a chat? And if you've got the support network in place, if you've got people surrounding you that can help that 45 minutes of recording time be 45 minutes of recording, then it's actually not too much in somebody's day. Yep. They can schedule out a little bit of time over lunch with a cup of tea and they can chat. What would have made me nervous, as I say, to repeat myself, is if I'd have had to be then fretting about the ramifications if something doesn't work technically. That would have stressed me out. I probably wouldn't have bothered starting. It would have put me off, quite frankly. So without wanting to blow too much smoke up your behind, to have you or whoever that producer might be for a podcaster, I think is really important. I've learned the technical skills when I'm DJing to a point, but I'm not hugely tech savvy, and tech things can make me a bit nervous. So it was really important just to have that so that I could focus on just trying to hopefully charm somebody into agreeing to do an interview, and then just crack on with the interview. And it's great to know that at the other end of the line is you, Jeremy, my producer, just there, just in case anything should go awry. And it means you can focus on the stuff that you're good at, so play to your strengths, and just direct message people, in my opinion, if you like Instagram. That's what I'd say.
Well, I think it's I'm glad you say that, and thank you again. I'm getting a big head. My headphones are expanding. But I would agree with you, because I think what you've got to try and when you start a podcast, you've got to sort of break it down and look at what is involved with doing it. First of all, there's a big time commitment. Then there's a level of investment or technical knowledge. So if you haven't got the technical knowledge, then you might need to invest in an editor or a producer. Then some investment in some equipment and various bits like that. So it is quite daunting. And trying to sort of put it all together can just make it so overwhelming that, you're a podcaster, Oli, which means you're a successful podcaster, because there's a lot of people out there who have a great idea of a podcast but haven't actually taken it forward. And it's still just an idea. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is sometimes just break the problem down into small manageable chunks. And if it means you've got to get help, then you've got to get help, because it means then your idea is going to get going. And when you came to me with your idea, I thought, I want to be part of this. This is amazing. So, I love editing all the podcasts I do. And I don't have any favoritism, but I do love yours, Oli, because it's just something that's it's very different to any of the other podcasts I do. You mentioned about, with being house music and it giving that sort of that vibe of the sort of the 90s. That's the sort of way I try and produce it as well, of giving it that that sort of raw edge almost, because you don't want it to be too polished. It's got to be raw, and I think that's without blowing my own trumpet, that's the joys of a safe pair of hands around to help you. Yeah. So I've been, as I say, very grateful to be part of it. But I think it's the manageable chunks that then just make it a lot easier, and to delegate some, because you can. I know quite a few podcasters who, again, they start and they get over that starting line, but then they'll maybe only do 1 or 2 episodes, because then they realise what workload is actually involved.
Definitely, yeah. And I think also just getting the microphone initially, getting the right microphone, the headphones, all that kind of stuff. There was a time when I would have had all day just to sit there and sort of Google stuff and watch YouTube videos. But busy people, and a lot of busy people probably want to do podcasts. They just need to manage their time effectively. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that it can be a quick and exciting and an easy process if you have that person alongside you to support you and hold your hand. Definitely, I think it's invaluable. I couldn't do it without somebody, and I'm sure people do, but in my opinion, it just makes it so much easier and so much better. So no brainer.
Well, thank you again. Now, people come into podcasting and their first thought is, I know this first episode is going to get 10,000 downloads easily.
Yeah.
They go in slightly with unrealistic expectation levels. Did you have any of those at any point?
No, I didn't. I knew that it would be hard to get those numbers, and I've kind of used techniques and things to just get good listening figures. But I suppose sometimes I thought that just by having a exciting, well-known guest on would guarantee that, and that's not the case, weirdly. And it's been a bit again like with Slimson. I can put a T-shirt on somebody with millions of Twitter followers, but if they're not really engaged followers, it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference to sales. And then sometimes you get somebody who's just got a real kind of core or a niche of people that they're surrounded by who just love our products, and it makes the world of difference. And I think that must be the case with podcasts. It just depends on so many different factors. So it's certainly not a depressing reality when you see the listening numbers, but it's a challenge because so many people are doing podcasts. I mean, it's hugely popular.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, your social media used to be great. You could get loads of reach and loads of followers just by a few clever hashtags. It doesn't work like that now. Everything's been monetized. Everything you need to pay for to get results. That's true of social media. And I'm sure you'll know more about this than me, but that's probably true of podcasting. Unless you're very, very well known, to get those figures, you've got to use techniques and possibly try and get ads and product placement and all that kind of stuff to help. But it's exciting enough for me and some. I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of people that are listening to these podcasts that otherwise wouldn't be, and they're potential customers, and they're just people that want to come with me on this little journey and hear the story. So that's cool.
Yeah. I was going to say it's often the results can be. Can be slow, and with podcasting, I think it's just a case of being consistent and just not doing it for the right reasons. And I think a lot of people again go into podcasting because they'll have the idea that they'll get 10,000 downloads first episode, they'll get a huge lucrative advertising deal, they'll get sponsorship, and they'll become an overnight success. And I think the thing you should always start with first and foremost is doing it for yourself, because podcasting is a lovely thing to have. That's it's not just broadcast and gone, it's there forever, and it's something you've done. It's a really good thing to just say, well, actually I'd start by doing it for yourself, because otherwise
definitely
you can really get bogged down with, oh god, that one didn't get as many downloads, and then you can start overthinking as to why that didn't happen. And it's like it's like fishing. I'm not really much of a fisherman. I find it quite boring, but I don't mind it occasionally, just sitting by a canal with some sandwiches and a beer and my radio. And sometimes I'll just not even put a hook on my line, and just because it's nice to sit by a canal. But if people walk past you just sitting by a canal, they think they're odd. But if you're fishing, they don't. So it's just like it's a thing I do. But it's like fishing. You can sometimes go and put your bait on the line and you'll get nothing, and then suddenly you'll get a big fish that comes. The key is just patience.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's just conversation. You might be pressing record, and there might be a red light telling you that actually you are recording. But essentially, it's like, we leave each other ridiculous voice notes all the time. They're not probably for public consumption, but they're hugely amusing and hugely funny to listen back to. They're nice when hopefully being quite funny when you're sending one. And it's just like chatting to your mates on the phone. Good podcast should be an hour's worth of chat, and they're like, God, I chatted to Mr. C. Whenever would I have had that opportunity? Yeah. He wouldn't even probably give me, a minute if I just met him outside a club. He's a lovely man, but he'd just be going on his way. But by virtue of the fact that you have a podcast, you approach them in the right way and say, I've got a podcast, and then it's backed up by an amazing producer and content and stuff and preparation that I put into all of my interviews, so that I research the guests so that I know exactly what their story is and find out as much as I can, and then you have an opportunity to sit down and have a chat. So what's better than that? And then, as you say, if you get those huge listener numbers, that's a bonus.
Oh yeah,
it's just do it for yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like you say, it's an opportunity to actually talk to like Mr. C. Again, that's just it blows my mind. Just as you said it, then again, I just had that big grin on my face just thinking about that opportunity. I was in shock for about a week. I kept saying to my wife, going, Jesus, Oli's got Mr. C. This is just amazing. And it's having a podcast to have that opportunity to then have the conversation. And if you've got a podcast, people are, I think the worst thing that anyone is going to say is no if you ask them. Yeah. They might say maybe, which can often be worse than a no.
Yeah.
They keep you hanging on.
Absolutely not.
But they're not going to say anything worse than that. And actually there's a fair chance that they're going to say yes. Mm-hmm. And then, like you just touched on it a moment ago, making sure that you research your guest and having a good interview, because it's all very well getting the guest on, but making sure that they feel that you've done your research, that you're not just
that's really important.
trying to just cash in on their followers or their influence.
That,
and your interviews, your research is superb. I have to say, I love your interviews. I think that because you make the guest feel very welcome, and you are interested rather than interesting. And I think that's the key thing. People are tuning in to listen to your guest. So you've got to make sure that you just ask them a question and shut up and let them talk.
Let them roll. That's definitely.
Everyone always has a story to tell, and it's just giving them the opportunity to tell that story. Everyone's got a good story inside them. Everyone's got a fascinating life. We are all net curtain twitchers at heart, really. We're all nosy. We love it, earwigging in on conversations. So I think, again, you're having the guests on. Make sure you've done your research and making sure that you've managed that time, because again, interviewing is such a big part. If you're going to do interviews on a podcast, it's such a huge chunk of your time and resources on that, because again, organising interviews,
that's something you mustn't underestimate, actually, was again when you're going into this thinking that certain people you'll know them inside out because you've been a fan for years and years, and even the people you think you know loads about, there's still so much you can find out. So that's something you have to factor in, but it's definitely worthwhile because then you're just prepared for everything. And if there is any kind of dead time or moments when it just goes a bit quiet, and you can just always just look down at the notes and think, okay, we can go off on this one now, and try and structure it in a certain way so that it's beginning, middle, and end, and how you think you want to try and finish it and round it up. And I've definitely picked up some skills along the way as to how I can. I'm by no means got there, but you get better and better every time.
But have you ever had any interview training or done interviews or anything before? Or
No. I mean, I always wanted to be an actor from being about 14 or 15. I sang as a cathedral chorister from a very young age, so I was always musical. And through doing that, I got into musicals, and through musicals, I got into theatre, did National Youth Theatre. So I was always very, very driven from a kind of theatre point of view, and wanting to become a professional actor. I did briefly think about maybe wanting to go into journalism. But I think for me, hopefully, it's just the skills that I've picked up over the years as an actor of having to speak to people, having to be put and work under a very high pressure situation has helped me. I'm not fazed by being under pressure, and I think I sometimes operate better under pressure. So for me personally, I've found that okay. I would imagine for some people, perhaps it might be tricky, but I don't know. It's hard for me to say. It's very kind of you to say that I interview well. I think it's just something perhaps that I've kind of learnt to do, and maybe there's an element of me playing a bit of a character, thinking, how would an interviewer approach this? How would a good radio personality or a good podcaster do it? I'll try and be one of those. So, it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but hopefully it's just be yourself and just try and ask interesting questions and listen.
Yeah.
Once you've asked it, listen.
But yeah, absolutely, that's the key, because other questions will come from what they're telling you. And again, it shows you're listening by asking other questions. And I think it's so important. I was asking, it's only because I think anyone listening to this might think, well, I'd have a go, but I'm not very good at interviewing. I don't think, don't see it as an interview. Everyone can have a casual chat with people. And I think that's the key thing, is don't see it as an interview. See it as a nice casual chat.
Yeah, but I'm sure listen to loads of podcasts, and they're so different, all of them. Some people, it really is just a chat. Literally like someone just sat down next to somebody on a kind of a park bench or at a bus stop or on the tube, or they can work in so many different ways. You've got big TV personalities and radio presenters doing them. You've also got people that, I like tattoos, and I listen to loads of tattoo podcasts, and the guy does an amazing tattoo podcast, and he's just brilliant, but it's very, very different to a lot of the other stuff that I listen to. And I just love the stories, and I think if you just be yourself, you'll create your own vibe, and you'll get your own audience and get your own sort of followers. So I just think don't try and be anything you're not. Just do your thing.
Well, no, I think you're naturally enthusiastic, and I think enthusiasm is as infectious as COVID. It just rubs off, and if you're
hopefully it's painful, yeah.
But you've got you've got a guest in front of you, and you're a big fan of theirs. Well, make sure you show you're a big fan of theirs by showing you. Like I keep repeating it, saying do your research, but make sure that you're interested in it. Like you said, listen to them, because it can be really daunting when if meeting a hero from your past or someone you respect.
Yeah, definitely. It can
be so daunting, and so making sure you've got some form of structure there that you can just fall back to if you do forget where you're going or whatever. I think it's so important. I got to interview Goldie when I did local radio a few years ago.
That's amazing.
And a similar experience to you. I slid into his DMs and just mentioned the word Tring, and he said, "Phone me."
Oh.
So I called him, and then, had a conversation, and I was so blown away that I could have been overwhelmed by the situation and just gone, I don't know what to fucking say. But I was I suppose it's the car salesman in me. I just had to make sure that I wanted him to like me first and foremost, because if he liked me, then chances are he's going to do this interview. And he did an interview, and originally he was only going to give me 20 minutes. And I've got a little tip that I have told you, Ollie, and I'm not going to repeat it for free on a podcast, but I used my little tip.
Yes.
And I ended up getting an hour and 20 minutes. So sometimes you can turn that interview from just a short interview by my little tip. You can turn it into a really long interview.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know the tip of which you speak.
Yes. Well, that's why we had to split Mr. C's episode into two.
Yeah.
Because we used the tip and it worked.
But no, as you say, when it is somebody that you kind of, either a fan of or you're just a little bit nervous about speaking to them because they've got clout, it is quite, as I say, I can operate under pressure, and I'm used to that, all that sort of feeling of dread in your stomach as they go, and counting down in 5, 4, 3. And you think every part of your body is saying, look, this is just like having a chat on the telephone, and suddenly you find yourself going, oh, hello! Yeah. And why am I speaking like that? And it's difficult. You've got to just kind of go, whoa, and breathe, like I'm sounding like Tigger. So you're saying things and you can hear yourself, and so I'm sure that happens to everybody. It is a bit of a skill to, you'd have to be sort of superhuman to not react in certain ways. And I've got slightly clammy hands thinking about it now, but it's fine. You get through all of these things, and sometimes I suppose these people, they understand that you might be a little bit overawed. It's not Paxman. They know that it is just somebody who's just doing a relatively small podcast. It might become something big, but they're going to be a little bit nervous, and they're nice people, so they'll put you at ease, and within about 2 minutes you listen back and you go, I might have sounded a little bit nervous at the start, but by the end I'm really holding my own, and this is great. It's just a chat.
I think guests actually, because a lot of these people in media are media trained, and often guests are just asked the same sort of questions. They go through the same mill of just yeah. So coming onto a podcast that is presented by a fan or someone who's just starting off in podcasting, or someone that's got any eye on journalism or something like that, is going to be such a different proposition for a guest. With these people, when they go on radio or TV, they know what they're going to get. They're going through the same questions, no matter what channel, no matter what radio station, they're just going to get asked the same things. So when they go onto podcast, they're actually getting a chance to be themselves. They're not having to sort of put on this, right, I've got to remember I'm going to be asked this, because their chances are they're given most of the questions they're asked first before the TV or radio interview. So coming on a podcast, usually it's good etiquette to give them the questions first. But if you've got a natural interest in that person, other questions, again, will come from that. And guests like that, because it shows that you've shown a genuine interest in them. I think it's, again, a really important thing.
Yeah, and you talk about having a media training or knowing how to be a good interviewer. Maybe there's more to it, and what you should celebrate more the fact that you don't know how to do it, and actually that is the thing that makes it unique. And think, a BBC interview, but they say, well, you can't ask that, or you mustn't start with that. That's not how you do it. And as you say, why not? And it makes the guest, if they are used to being interviewed by multiple different media channels and what have you, just a nice way they can just sit back and think, this is really just going to be a chat in the pub, really informal, and that'll bring out the best in them. So no set rules. I think just make sure it's polished in terms of production, but the chat, as long as you've done your research and you do the listening and ask interesting questions, that's about it, I think, really. I mean, it doesn't have to be too complicated, does it, Jeremy? I don't think, really.
No, not at all. It doesn't have to be too complicated. I call it ignorant brilliance. Is the best way to be. Is sometimes it's better to go in not knowing how to do something, but having a some sort of idea, and just letting that brilliance come through. So it's just be yourself, relax, and just think, well, what's the worst going to happen? As long as you're respectful again to the guests, and you're not trying to. If you've got an eye on journalism and you're trying to ask them pressing questions or things that are going to make them feel uncomfortable, then don't do that. But I think your interviews are always just really lovely chats that sum up the guest, presents the guest in a really wonderful way that shows them their lovely personalities and everything. And the other bonus you get with each episode, as well as a guest mix as well. So each DJ does a little guest mix at the end of each episode. So you get like 2 for the price of 1 with your podcast.
Yeah. that was important to me. I wanted that to make, that to be part of it, and that's been great that we can do that, and you can edit it and drop those in so beautifully with little trails at the start, and yeah, it's great. It's exactly what I wanted, and a lot of the time we're getting the guests to actually do the mix as well. So yeah, it's really cool, really cool. I'm really, really chuffed and really excited for what the future might bring with it all. But yeah, it's been a good start, definitely.
Well, Ollie, this has been an absolute joy, but our time is almost up.
Oh, it's so professional. We mentioned 5:10. I know the listeners can't see the clock in real time, but here in the UK it's now 17:09, and as we round things up, we're almost at 17:10, which is what we predicted, Jeremy.
And with the station coming to a close now, we'll
That's
be
brilliant.
playing the national anthem. But Ollie,
no, thank you so much. Thank you.
No, thank you. And if listeners want to keep in touch, want to find out more, we'll obviously put all the links in the show notes. But what's the best way for them to keep in touch with you?
Well, on the socials, it's at Slimson Store for Slimson Garms and for Slimson Business, podcast business. The website is slimsonstore.com. And for my personal Instagram, it's at Slimson DJ, which covers all things DJing, acting, voiceovers, dog walking, wife and kids. I think in that order, yeah. But yeah, that's me. But thank you.
Spinning mini plates. No, thank you,
Indeed,
Ollie.
yes.
It has been a joy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my guests for joining me today here on the Your Voice Here podcast. If you'd like to find out more information about what we discussed on today's episode, along with finding out a bit more about our guest, then check out the show notes for more details. And of course, thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated, and it's nice to know someone's actually listening to me. If you'd like to find out more about Your Voice Here, again, check out the show notes. If you'd like to get in touch, then you can email hello@yourvoicehere.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Now, before every interview, I try and warm up every guest by doing a quick fire question round. It acts as a nice way to get them laughing, warming up their vocal cords, and just to relax them a little bit. Give it a try if you're a podcaster. Free tip, there you go. I did think, though, what shall I do with all these quickfire question rounds that don't really make it into the podcast? Well, why not just bolt it onto the end and see if listeners like it? I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to you joining me next time. Take care. I'm going to ask you some quick-fire questions. We're going to try and do this in under a minute if we can. So let's start. Ollie, are you ready?
Oh yeah, fire away, but make them quick.
Okay, right, quick as we can.
Yeah.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
Death row meal.
Sorry, death row meal.
Death row meal. If you're on death row, you're about to be executed, and you get given a last meal, what's your choice?
Oh, haddock and chips or roast dinner? Haddock and chips.
Mushy peas?
No.
Okay. One word that would describe you.
Enthusiastic.
X-ray vision or ability to fly?
X-ray vision. Pervy.
Same. If you could travel back in...
Oh God, this is good. Oh God. I knew that one straight away.
Yeah. If you could travel back in time and do just one thing, what would it be?
Kids being born.
Nice. Polka dots or plaid?
Polka dots.
Jaffa cake or biscuit?
Cake.
Favourite theme park in the world?
Oh, Lightwater Valley in North Yorkshire. It's a bit tacky, but there.
Ride whippet. Favourite time of year?
Summer.
A good night in?
Fire red wine.
That sounds like a good night in. I'm going round to yours. A good night out?
Ibiza.
How would you like to be remembered?
Great party.
Job done. Thank you, Oliver.
Jeremy, cut it out.